Hello and welcome to episode 307 of the Daily Fantasy Edge. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the analysts here at DraftKings. I'm the father of the most beautiful beast in the world, Jerry. And we are coming off of a God-fearing week. Yes, it's true. Even the true greats, like the God himself, Chris Godwin, bleed. We all bleed. We saw it Sunday as Godwin pulled his hamstring midway through the third quarter, didn't return, is likely done for the season, man. You really do hate to see it, especially since I was up to my eyeballs in week 15 in Chris Godwin exposure, had him in cash and actually played a bunch of GPPs this week. And my strongest GPP take was being in on the Bucs pass game. Ideal matchup against the Lions. Ownership down because of Jameis Winston's thumb, quote unquote, injury. Target distribution narrowed by Mike Evans' injury, game in a dome, some sleepers in Justin Watson and Brashad Perriman and OJ Howard, just perfect spot to be in on the Bucs pass game. And of course, Jameis goes off and I still don't win anything because Godwin gets hurt, because I had Kenny Golladay on most of these teams, because my best Winston, Perriman, Godwin, Amendola, Kenyon Drake team had Ian Thomas on it. So, tournaments, man, just so tilting. But anyways, I thought it was a really clear-cut week in terms of the best plays. My player pool was really, really small for cash, but inside that small player pool, there were some really tough decisions. Chris Carson versus Saquon Barkley was one that I grappled with a lot. DeAndre Hopkins versus Chris Godwin, another. Ian Thomas versus Tyler Higbee. Greg Ward versus Keelan Cole. Deshaun Watson versus Ryan Tannehill, or save the money with Kyler Murray. So yeah, I thought it was really tight, not a lot of options to play in cash, which is usually a week that I like. But then those decisions within that kind of small pool were really rough. One of the decisions that I never really considered in cash, but in hindsight, I think was pretty egregious, was Patrick Laird versus Kenyon Drake. In other words, I only really considered 4 running backs: Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Chris Carson, and Patrick Laird. If I would have gone to 5, it would have been Todd Gurley, but in hindsight, man, let's think about Patrick Laird versus Kenyon Drake for a second. I think they had very similar touch projections. In fact, you could actually argue that Kenyon Drake's touch projection was better if you didn't think that David Johnson's role would expand. Laird is essentially like a 4th or 5th stringer. Kenyon Drake is legit a plus NFL player. Patrick Laird was on the road in some weather. Kenyon Drake was at home in perfect conditions. Patrick Laird plays for the Dolphins. They're 31st in yards per play. I mean, they just suck. Kenyon Drake plays for Arizona's really running back friendly scheme. They're at least 19th in yards per play. And really their running back scheme and has been awesome all year and kind of matchup proof. And I guess the important point that I want to make, one that I didn't take into account enough, was that Patrick Laird's week 14 role was not a lock to sustain. And that's really what you're betting on, right? Like, I never, ever would have played a Dolphins running back who I thought would handle 55 or 60% of the running back touches. Even at 3,500, I didn't play Kalen Ballage once all year. So I went to play Patrick Laird if I thought he would only get 60% of the work at 3,500, let alone 4,500. So yeah, Laird dropped a pass. He got stuffed on a 4th and 1. And then Myles Gaskin starts rotating in a bit. And the next thing you know, he's rotating in a lot and it just looks really bad. And maybe there was some downside with Drake there too in terms of usage, if he had played poorly. But I guess my point is that for only 500 more, I should have at least considered Kenyon Drake harder in cash. I mean, in tournaments, it should go without saying, obviously. In the $333 Wildcat, Patrick Laird was 21% owned and Kenyon Drake was 8% owned, right? Like, should be a no-brainer. And I think that ownership disparity was pretty easy to project. Speaking of ownership, a few things I wanted to point out. The first one is Raheem Mostert, brother Raheem. I mean, I love Raheem, a legit Hall of Famer team preseason, but 5,200 for a running back in a 3-man committee, not a 2-man committee, a 3-man committee with a limited pass game role. I just didn't even really think that Raheem Mostert was in play, and he was 19% owned in the Millie Maker. Darius Slayton, I like Darius Slayton. You could make a pretty good case going into that game. He was a number 3 wide receiver. behind Shepard and Tate with Eli Manning at quarterback, and he was 24% owned. You know, one thing about tournaments, I think everyone trying to find the 1% play that no one else has, you know, I think that every week there are legit good players who come in low owned. And not that I was on any of these guys, you know, because I wasn't, but I think this week was a really good example of that. You know, Julio Jones with no Calvin Ridley, a banged up 49ers secondary. Julio Jones was 6% owned. Miles Sanders against the Redskins, 7% owned. You know, Brashad Perriman, the no doubt number 2 wide receiver for Jameis Winston against the Lions, 8% owned. Ezekiel Elliott at home, you know, like a stone lock for 20 plus touches, 5% owned. You know, like actual good players, actual good plays, not some random one-offs that happen to be 1% owned because they suck. Anyway, let's get back to a man's game here in cash and the 4-man. And this was maybe the closest 4-man we've ever had. The listener, MJG2583, had scored 170.78 points. I scored 169.76. Al scored 167.7. And Peter scored at 160.96. Crazy. The difference maker for MJG, of course, is what I just talked about. He played McCaffrey, Gurley, and Kenyon Drake, not Patrick Laird. So even though he played Amari Cooper and Will Fuller and Darius Slayton and Dak, you know, all of whom I thought were pretty thin for cash. I mean, it didn't matter. He had the Drake, so. I'd note that all 4 of us played Christian McCaffrey, you know, and I meant to look back before this to see how many times I've played Christian McCaffrey this season when he's been on the main slate. I think it might be every single time except one. I don't know for sure. Because, you know, like, even if he's not as strong of a point per dollar play as, say, Chris Carson, the floor in cash is just incredibly valuable, obviously. And I actually think I haven't looked at next week's slate yet, week 16 slate, but I do think that with Will Grier starting or expected to start for the Panthers, it introduces a wider range of outcomes for Christian McCaffrey. Like, his floor is lowered because we just don't know exactly what Will Grier is going to do, how they're going to play with Will Grier, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll talk about that more as the week goes on. But just generally speaking about my team, I mean, I just continue to run so pure. Like, I'm having my best year ever in cash, and I'm not sure that I'm playing better. I mean, I'm just getting things like Chris Conley, 2 touchdowns late, and Tyler Higbee going ham in garbage time. Just things like that, you know, just seem to be going in my favor for a lot of the year and makes such a massive difference. But anyways, congrats to MJG. Great win. Great job. All right, let's get to the Listener League. Listener League was 3,000 entries once again in week 15, but still flat payouts. No rate, can't beat that. To get into the week 16 Listener League, it's up already. Go to DK Playbook, find the logo, find the link, get in there. All right, the winner of the week 15 league was friend of the show, 2-time winner. I repeat, 2-time winner of the Listener League. Frequent listener question asker, Double J65. I can't even fathom winning this thing twice. I mean, it's pretty impressive. Ryan Tannehill at 4.6%, AJ Brown at 9%. Now, I understand that compared to other sites around the industry, AJ Brown was very expensive on DraftKings, and Tannehill really was too. But yeah, in this state of DFS, that depresses ownership. People are very price sensitive. So Carson, so, you know, AJ Brown was just, you could project that AJ Brown was a very good raw play, just not a good point per dollar play, and that was going to depress his ownership. So to get Tannehill to AJ Brown at a total ownership of 13.6%, pretty strong. For Double J, he played Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake, and Ezekiel Elliott at running back. You know, Zeke was only 3.8% in this. Just, man. Julio, 8%. Conley, Higbee, just a great team. Won by 30 points. Double J did. That might be the biggest margin of victory ever in the Listener League. In second place was MS DeLuca 10. Tannehill, AJ Brown, also Corey Davis, DeAndre Hopkins for the full game stack there. Then Chris Carson, Miles Sanders, and Kenyon Drake. Sanders, he paired Sanders with Eagles defense, played Tyler Higbee. Just a very, very professional lineup there from MS DeLuca 10. Feel like I know that screen name from somewhere. Maybe I've seen him in the streets before. I actually don't remember, but very nice, very professional lineup there from MS DeLuca 10. In third place was Team Estrogen 35. What a name. I love it. Team Estrogen. Jameis, Godwin, OJ Howard, not Perriman, not Justin Watson, Jameis, Godwin, OJ Howard bring it back with Danny Amendola, not Kenny Galladay. And, you know, I thought about that, that Kenny Galladay was maybe a little bit overpriced. But I had, you know, on pretty much all or most of my Jameis stacks, I brought it back with Galladay, and I had Amendola on some, as I mentioned, but maybe a mistake there, especially in full PPR with the way Amendola sets up. But anyways, Team Estrogen had Kenyon Drake, Miles Sanders at running back. He went with 4 wide receivers. He stuck with Tyreek Hill in the snow. And, you know, Tyreek Hill's ownership was 4.9% in this. I am certain that it would have been far, far higher in good weather. I don't know. I got scared a bit by the snow on Sunday morning. It looked like legit bad, like 6 inches. And, you know, on the snow, and really in weather in general, we just don't know. You know, we don't know if 15-mile-an-hour winds are going to actually affect the game in this specific instance in, you know, Eli Manning or whatever, and Ryan Fitzpatrick. We just don't know. So I didn't know about the snow. I chose to move off Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, which was a stack I really liked a lot for tournaments. I don't know. We just don't know. It's really, I've talked about weather too much. It's just so hard to evaluate whether weather was the factor for games or not. All right, now it is time for the listener questions. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, had a bunch of leftover questions from the last few weeks, so I'm going to hit those today. We're going to do a 6-pack. Question 1 comes from DFS Rhino. He says, how do you handle DFS taxes, and what strategies are you going to use to lower your tax bill? Yeah, so I take this question once a year because I think it's important. Please note, I am not a CPA. You should obviously consult your accountant. But everyone needs to understand the situation, right? If you profit more than $600 on DraftKings in a calendar year, you will be getting a 1099 miscellaneous tax form from them, which shows the exact amount that you profited. That form will also be filed with the IRS. In other words, you must address it in your 2019 return. And I think a lot of people just like simply don't realize this, right? Or they choose to ignore it, or they don't understand. Like, people are like, hey, I want to be a professional DFS player. I can win. Okay. But do you realize that you're going to give up 30% or more, you know, depending on your tax rate, I guess, of your winnings at the end of the year? And based on the way taxes work, there's no like year-to-year stretching. Like, in other words, let's say I win $1 million in 2019. I write a check to the government for $400,000. Now, let's say in 2020, I lose $1 million. Let me get that $400K back, right? You know, no, that's not the way it works. So look, I just step back with all this stuff, and I look at it like, hey, the government is my partner in everything I do. If I make money, you know, I make the government money also. And of course, in this case, in the case of DFS or poker or whatever, we're only partners when we win. You know, if we lose for a year, they say, that sucks, but you're on your own there. You know, good luck. So, you know, I don't have any great advice here. All I want people to be sure is that they're aware, if they were lucky enough to profit more than $600, that it needs to be addressed. Question 2 comes from All the Pigskin. He says, why are so many sharps up in arms about the Millie Maker winning lineup? Yeah, I think this question refers to last week, week 14, 2 weeks ago. First of all, I would use the term sharps, quote unquote, very loosely in this case. Okay, that's the first thing. Second, I didn't really follow the, controversy or whatever was going on Twitter. It's obviously so stupid on so many levels. Like, the Millie Maker is a tournament for fun. It is not for grinding, right? And like, nobody likes to grind harder than me and evaluate and think about what's right and what's wrong. But not in the Millie Maker, right? Like, think of it like this. Everyone who enters has what I would call a lottery ticket, right? A $20 lottery ticket if it's a $20 buy-in. You know, if you enter 10 times, you have 10 lottery tickets. Great. Now, if you're good, maybe your lottery ticket is worth $20.25 or $20.50. If you're bad, maybe each of your tickets is only worth, $19.50. But regardless, it's just not that different, right? In a tournament that big with that many entries, with literally all the money on top, it's just so silly to rip on people's lineups. It's just a tournament for fun. Let the people just click whoever the hell they want. Let them just mash buttons and fire it in there and hope for the best. Like, of course, like, people's correlations in the Millie Maker isn't going to be perfect and, they're going to be under leveraged or their cumulative ownership is going to be too high or too low, whatever, like who cares? Like people throwing darts at the Millie Maker aren't out there to grind. They're just hoping to get a sweat, to pick some players they like, to do it on their phone. Like, that's great, man. Like, critiquing their lineup is a joke. I mean, the whole idea of tapping the tank too is just so dumb anyways. Like, if anyone's ever played live poker, you see these stone freaking morons just rip a person after they win a hand. Wow, how could you play that? How you had this on the, like, just telling them what they did wrong, whining. I mean, the people who do that should be like banned from life. Like, these are the worst people on the face of the planet. I mean, yeah. So I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about that, but it just tilts me so much. Question 3 comes from DZ42. He says, Adam, I'm 2-0 versus you in head-to-head. Shout out to me. My question is, do you keep track of your records versus opponents in head-to-head or just your overall record? Yeah, nice. Shout out to you, DZ. Yeah, so the program I use to track, my results and everything does allow me to search by name. I can see how I fared against anyone ever. But I rarely look at that. Like I guess I do if I'm playing someone a bunch at high stakes and, maybe I've been losing, I've lost 5 of 6 or I've lost 8 of 10 or I've lost 15 of 20 or something like that. Maybe it's time to take a closer look. Maybe this person is just better than me and I should stop playing them, or go back through and look at all the matchups and see what I find, or in the case of preseason or WNBA, maybe this person just has better information than I do. But generally speaking, I don't look at opponents too much. I just appreciate the action. So yeah, it is. I guess it's fun or interesting to look at, but question 5 comes from Bobby Howe. He says, how and when did you become confident in your DFS play enough to put a lot of dollars into play each week? Did you start small until you were profitable, or was it something you were comfortable doing from the start? Yeah, I think basically what Bobby is asking is, how do you know if you're winning? How do you know if you're a winner? How do you know if you're plus EV and X activity like DFS? And it's a really hard question. I actually asked Phil Galfond this exact question when he came on the show, episode 253. And it's hard because the environment is always changing, right? It's not like, Jeff Ma, if you guys listen to the Bet the Process podcast, Jeff Ma always talks about blackjack as like a perfect petri dish. Like, nothing's changing in blackjack. The game is the game. It is what it is. But in DFS or poker, like, things are always changing. Like, I could be a winner in the 1K double up on DraftKings last year, but not this year, right? Maybe because 2 or 3 people that play it that you're better than, they quit. And all of a sudden, you're not have a winning expectation. Or maybe like the pricing adjusts on quarterbacks, or, DraftKings changes their pricing algorithm and you don't adjust to it, right? And now you're a loser. So look, Phil Galfond gave the answer when I asked him about looking at your opponents, evaluating your opponent's play. And if we can identify mistakes that they've made, hopefully correctly identify mistakes that they've made, then, in theory, we should be winning and we should continue to press our edge. So I hope that makes sense. All right, last question we are going to do today comes from Mike Honcho. He says, everybody's perfect day is different. What is your perfect day? Yeah, it's an interesting question. I never really thought about this fully. Seems like a fun exercise though. So let's do it. Let's start 9:30 a.m. Wake up, no alarm. I actually think that one of, life's greatest luxuries, I think Peter said this before, is, waking up naturally without an alarm. 9:35 a.m., get on the team sex. A lot of our data at Gender Labs does show that early morning coitus is actually optimal for both performance and ROD, rest of day, tone setting. 9:38 a.m., get a good clean breakfast in us. I think, something like 3 scrambled eggs, some fruit, peanuts, avocado, feel really good. 10:30 a.m., get out on the tennis court. Hopefully it's nice and hot, real hot out there. Play a match for money, fight hard for a win. Leave nothing on the court, all heart. It's the best way to play tennis, really hard. 1:30 p.m., get one of those super hot showers. I love a super hot shower, at least like 100 degrees. And then, get right after that, get a really good healthy lunch, thinking like maybe a chopped salad with blackened chicken or something like that, a baked potato on the side. 3 p.m., hopefully we're in the mountains somewhere, or at least like a cool park, something in nature, go on a nice, somewhat strenuous hike, get to the top, do a J, become one with nature. That sounds good for kind of an afternoon activity. 6 p.m., go out to a nice dinner. I've been into Greek food lately, get some really good Greek food, have roughly 1.5 beers, a few laughs. 9 p.m., get home, engage in some mind expanding activity, be outside again. 10:30, get on the team once again, the team sex once again, and then 10:35 p.m. beddage, of course. Yeah, sounds pretty great to me, man. Max freedom, it's like, it's cliche to say, I think, but money really isn't about things, like the pursuit of money isn't about having things at all. Like I couldn't care less about cars and clothes or whatever. It's just about freedom to hopefully one day be able to have your perfect day every day, just freedom. That's all. All right. That is going to do it for this edition of the Solo Pod. We'll be back on Thursday with Al and Pete to discuss Week 16 main slate. Only a couple main slates left, sad times. So, for producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody. We are promoters at DraftKings and also avid fans. Our usernames are Adam Levitan, Al Smizzle, and CSU Ram 88. We may sometimes play on our personal accounts in the games that we offer advice on. Although we have expressed our personal view on the games and strategies in this podcast, they do not necessarily reflect the views of DraftKings, and we also may deploy different players and strategies than what we recommended in this podcast.